Hi everyone, welcome back to Waves of Change Women at Sea. It's a new season, and with it, a new layer to the conversation. This time, I'm inviting the voices of the men who stand beside us, our allies. Because while this podcast is rooted in sharing women's stories, real change in the maritime world won't happen in isolation. We need men at the table, not just to listen, but to understand and stand with us. So I'm kicking things off with someone I've known and respected for years, Richard. He's a chief officer with over a decade of offshore experience, and more importantly, he's been a constant source of support in my journey. In this conversation, we talk about what it really means to lead at sea, what support for women should look like, and how we move beyond tokenism and true inclusion. Let's dive in. Hi, Richard. How are you?
Hi, Carla. Long time no hear, no time no see. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I just want to say thank you so much for doing this, for agreeing to be my interviewee. It actually is a quite special interview because you're the first male that I have on the podcast, and I really wanted you to be that person because you've been very supportive of me throughout
Yeah,
everything that I do. And
yeah,
do you remember when I told you, hey, I thinking of doing this podcast, and you immediately just started sending me contacts of who you thought would be good candidates for the interview and stuff like that. So you didn't
yeah.
put in your name, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, I try to stay in the shadows, but I'm doing this only because it's you. I hope I don't disappoint.
Well, exactly. That's why I know you're doing it too. I kind of taking full advantage of it, you know. Okay, so we'll just jump right in, and I'm very familiar with you, obviously, because you're my good friend. But
Yeah,
some of the questions I want you to just we'll go in, give us some of your background and stuff like that, right? So let's jump
sure.
in. Okay, Richard, so can you tell me a bit about where you're from and how your journey into offshore started and what got you hooked in the field?
Well, just like you, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, born and raised in San Fernando. This career is something I didn't really expect to enter into. Throughout secondary school, it's not something you really heard about. So, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to study. But as most seafarers, nowadays they typically have a family friend or a family who in the industry. So for me, it was a family friend. He was a marine pilot at the time. He mentioned how lucrative a life at sea could be. So, that immediately piqued my interest when he told me, how much money I could be making per month and whatnot.
Yeah,
So
I think that's
I think that
yeah.
yeah, for everyone, I believe that's how it was. And you get solely dream of traveling the world and seeing all these countries. You travel for free and whatnot. So I applied to the University of Trinidad and Tobago. They had just started their maritime operations program. It was the second year. And through that program, you could work towards your OOW certification. My journey to offshore wasn't very direct because I think for the most part, cadetship program was predominantly tankers and bulk carriers. So for me, I was on one product tanker. I stayed there for 4.5 months, and then an LNG carrier. I stayed there for 7.5 months. So naturally, when you get your license afterwards, I went straight to a tanker. It was an LPG carrier where I stayed for 6.5 months. So you're able to travel the world, see different countries. However, this time we could play a tool, on your mental. You're away from your family, you're away from your friends.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
when I was on that vessel, there was a cadet from Trinidad as well. He joined the same time as I did,
Mm-hmm.
and his previous cadetship was on offshore supply vessels, which were DP vessels as well, dynamic positioning vessels.
Mm-hmm.
So he basically explained how the salaries are a little bit better, the rotations are a little bit better, and that caught my attention. So I reached out to some colleagues. Well, you would know them. They were working on offshore supply vessels as well,
Mm-hmm.
and I decided to make the switch there. So following that, this would have been what, 2012? Yeah, 20. See how long ago? 2012. Um, I did my DP training at Consberg in Houston, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And following that, I applied for local jobs on offshore supply vessels. And it has honestly been the best decision I've made for my career and my life. The work-life balance is way better. My
Mm-hmm.
girlfriend at the time, this was 2012, my girlfriend at the time, who is my wife now, was, of course, extremely happy with that change. So moving from working 4 months on or 6 months on to 2, 3 months off to 4 weeks on and 6 weeks off, it was way better.
Yeah, it's I think it's definitely better for your family life and well, and you said like, financially, fiscally, it was a good decision too. So, but I find that so interesting that cadet actually changed the trajectory a little bit of your sailing.
So really, he was God sent for sure. I still, maintain contact with him as well. He's a
Yeah.
really good guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so now you've been in offshore for a while. How long have you been in offshore now?
So I started working as an officer. I remember the exact date, December the 5th, 2011, as an officer.
Okay.
And yeah, that was the first vessel I went on as
Yeah.
an officer. But then on offshore supply vessels was September 2012.
Okay,
So,
okay.
that's roughly what, 13 years? Yeah, 13 years now.
Yeah.
Um, the majority of my career has been as a second officer.
Hmm.
And I think that it benefited me immensely because, you have certain responsibility, but not the full weight of all the, management level decisions. So
Hmm.
you're in a space where you could observe, you could make little mistakes without any kind of dire consequences. And I've been fortunate enough to work with different nationalities. You see different management styles. You learn what to do. You learn plenty of what not to do as well, and you learn how to handle situations differently. I wouldn't say there was one thing that has, put me through this, shaped me through this path, but lessons learned over, all these years, kind of shape how I operate today.
And right now you're a chief officer, right?
Correct, yes.
Right. Okay. So that's just like one step away from the captain.
Yeah. Well, I actually have my master COC, unlimited COC as well. So,
So,
just waiting on promotion. I guess we'll discuss that later on.
in the next episode, maybe.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, you said a couple, you made mention of a couple acronyms like OOW, which is Officer of the Watch, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the COC is,
Certificate of competency.
right, that's basically like your license.
Your license, yeah. So your license, chief officer, any type of vessel, at deep sea. So you could work offshore, you could work foreign going.
Yeah, and the master COC is basically as the captain license, right?
Correct, yeah. So captain license, same thing, any size vessel, and deep sea, offshore supply, anything like that.
Pretty cool. Okay, so can you tell me then a little bit about what a typical hitch offshore looks like for you?
So right now, the vessel I'm on and the company I'm with, they typically have a 6 week on, 6 week off rotation. Um, The vessel, on the first few days, you're in port are usually intense because the vessel is really alongside. So this vessel actually has a kind of specialized operation. So you stay offshore for the full 6 weeks, and then you're back in port for maybe 2 to 3 days. So they try to put in, try to get a lot of work done as much as possible in that short window of time. However, once you're at sea, things kind of settle down into a rhythm. And I particularly like to tackle specific core jobs within that first week, to get it out of the way, and then move on to more critical jobs and more scheduled tasks. The operations that we deal with, it's called walk to work operations. So it's where we transport crews from platforms to another platform. So from manned platforms to unmanned platforms via a hydraulically powered motion compensator gangway. So we have this big gangway on board.
Oh, wow, that's okay. So go
I
slow.
get
Yeah,
technical right
yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah. No. It's nice. It's nice. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we would go into position into the 500-meter zone of the facility of the installation. We would get, let's say, within 15 to 12 meters away from the platform. The gangway will extend its arm out to connect to the platform on a secure landing. Once all the checks are made, the vessel is stable, the gangway is stable, then the personnel will come across onto the vessel. They will come across to the vessel, the gangway will retract, we will exit the 500-meter zone of the facility, and then we will proceed to the other location where the same thing will happen, but the personnel will come off and go on to the installation.
Okay. So I guess like it's a really specialized. So you said gangway, right? So I just want to clarify that that's like a pathway, like a bridge sort of thing, right?
Exactly like a bridge, yeah.
Yeah. So
A small bridge.
yeah, and it's probably and it's I guess and it's really specialized because you're out at sea and you're going up and down and this and so the gangway it's a very complicated operation.
Yeah, you have a team. It's a two-man team who operate the gangway. They make checks throughout our time offshore. It's very good to see how, urge any of the listeners to just go online. You could Google it, you could YouTube, you could search Amperman Gangway, and you would see it's something that, the first time you see it, you would never think that something like this, could, how could someone even have the concept of creating something like this, an idea of this, it's amazing to see.
Yeah, well that led us straight into my next question was that is there like a part of your job that people don't really see or understand from the outside that you could tell us about? So I
Yeah,
this would be something like that.
yeah, exactly like that. Because I think most people would think, you're navigating, you're going from one spot to the other, you're offloading cargo. And, because this is a specialized job, it's something that not much people would know about.
Mhm.
Um, and even if it wasn't this, like there are other things that people don't really take into consideration that, they won't really think about. Nowadays, there's a lot of paperwork on board,
Mhm.
a lot of job planning. You have to anticipate problems before they happen, risk assessments to be done, compliance checks to be done, and then you coordinate with, multiple stakeholders at a time. You have I don't know, I don't want to get too technical, but you have shore-based personnel you communicate with, you have the office side, and then you have the client. So, it can take a little mental load, especially as you're responsible for safety, and not just for yourself, but for the entire crew and the vessel. But I would say, after time, I mean, I've been in the industry for quite some time. So it becomes easier as it becomes, habit.
Yeah.
Um, but one of the harder things I believe is that I think this goes for most industries when you're in a management position, there's the managing of people. I think that is the hardest part of my job for now
Yeah.
because You have to deal with different personalities, deal with different nationalities. That human element of being able to actually motivate people as well can be difficult at times.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So, okay, you have always been someone to me who's supported women in the industry, right? We're gonna get a little bit tougher on your questions now. The easy ones finish. So, um, so yeah, you've been very supportive of women in the industry, including me, and I appreciate you very much for it. So, I want to ask, why has that mattered to you?
Well, to be honest, it started with supporting my friends. So that would be you, of course. And then, the other girls who were in our class at the time.
Yeah, yeah,
You would hear their stories and the difficulties that they experience with, women at sea. And it would be things that I could never really personally relate to. Yeah,
mhm,
and it kind of make you realize how unfair the environment can sometimes be. Sadly, what I've realized is that misogyny, sexism, all this exists in the industry. It exists in the world,
yeah,
and
true.
many people misunderstand what feminism is. Sorry. Um, I don't know what they think. I mean, we know it's about equality, but some people think, it's something completely different. And if you consider, I don't want to get this fact wrong. I think it's women make up less than 2% of the
Yeah,
global seafaring workforce.
yeah,
So I
that's
think
accurate.
yeah, I think it's important to advocate more inclusivity for female seafarers out there.
Yeah. Well, that's very well said, Richard. Um, yeah, and very thoughtful of you. The thing about it is that why I wanted to have the male perspective also on this podcast is because for the same inclusivity that you're talking about, I don't believe that any of those things could really happen without having men in the conversation too.
Correct.
It's important. The conversation has to be with everyone, and
Hmm.
all of us have to participate. So, but yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm glad that you feel that way, to help
Yeah,
women in the industry. But I want to
yeah.
ask you about what you noticed in the industry. Have you noticed any shifts in the way women are treated or included offshore, or just at sea in general?
I've been, as said, in the industry for quite some time, so I've worked with a lot of women, some of whom have been on their podcast as well.
Yeah, yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, the capacity as officer, some as cadets. So I have seen increases. You can see an active push to hire more women, which obviously is a step in the right direction. But sometimes I kind of question it because I don't know if it's just for show, because they would take pictures, they would kind of publicize that, like, yeah, look, we hiring woman. So I don't know if it's an honest step they're taking, or if it's just to show clients, to showing, we're being inclusive. But nevertheless, it is a step in the correct direction.
I think what you're touching on is like tokenism, like,
Exactly.
yeah. And yes, I think I've personally been part of that.
Hmm.
Where, like you're there and you realize, oh, I'm the token.
The
And
token, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and I think many women might relate to it who are working at sea or in the maritime industry too, to exactly that point. But as you said, like it's it is what it is, but you still have to look for the positive in it, I think, is that at least we're
Exactly, yeah.
taking one step forward and at least we're being included, even if it's in this way. It's not ideal, but we have to keep moving forward.
True that. And I've seen companies, they've added, sexual harassment training and awareness programs around diversity. It's becoming more common. So I guess these companies, if they implement this things will change, there'll be a greater change. And obviously things will differ between companies and between countries and regions and whatnot. But as far as it is in Trinidad, I've seen a big push.
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, that's true because I interviewed a lot of women from, well, not a lot, but I introduced some women who actually work in Trinidad. There are lots of officers who work in Trinidad right now, female
Mm.
officers, which I think is actually pretty cool. But okay, so what do you think still needs to change if you could see something?
Um, the culture needs to change. So we have sometimes you have a culture where some people would think, okay, well, working at sea is not a job for a woman, and they should have more traditional roles and whatnot. So I think the culture is the main thing that has to change, um, because you could put how much policies in place that wouldn't really affect. Once it's not enforced, it won't affect the culture. So in addition to that, with the policies, you have the policies in place, but you need to have like a zero tolerance for harassment and for women to better report, things that occur on board.
Yeah.
And I think this goes across the board, not just for women. There should be a more visible pathway for advancement into leadership roles. So you start in this position and you want to reach this goal. Like, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? A mentorship as well. I know there are a few groups that where women
Yeah.
are there to support each other. Yeah.
Yeah. The women I've interviewed before, they've all been very active in many of those groups, actually. Um,
Mhm.
and they all point to mentorship as something that is helpful for them and for women in the industry. And some of them actually have male mentors. I mean, it's quite understandable, because it's not a lot of women who actively work
Correct.
at sea.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But what would you suggest to male officers or colleagues who could be more active allies, without overstepping?
Some men would they would think that they're helping in a situation when they're not really helping,
Yeah.
you know. Um, so what we need to do, like listen first. Don't assume that someone needs help. You can ask, you observe, you see what's going on. Um, if you see some inappropriate behavior, you could say something even if it's uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And you need to create an environment where communication is there, everyone feels heard, everyone is respected. I think people like to be a part of a team rather than be, okay, well, I am a woman in the team. Everyone is part of a team. We're here to do the same job. And rather than them being, single out and feel as if, they're being helped. I
Yeah.
don't know if you would agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, no, no, I do agree with it because there's a bit of isolation attached to it, I think. Um,
Mhm.
when you're the only female in a room or in a space. So feeling included is
Yeah.
something that I think is important. Um,
Mhm.
well, can you tell me you mentioned a little bit before about the human aspect of management in these kinds of environments, kind of difficult, right? But what have you learned about leadership from working offshore?
So I know you know the saying, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah,
A parent might tell a child that because, they want them to do something, even though you don't do it yourself.
yeah,
Um, there's some old captains who would, tend to be like that. You're barking out orders.
yeah.
And, for tasks that the captain himself, wouldn't particularly want to do or has done in the past.
Hmm.
So what I've learned is that you need to show the crew that you're part of the team as well. So sometimes what I do, I mean not all the time, but whenever possible, I would actually for any tasks that I give the deck crew, I'd actually go down on deck. I'll have on my coveralls. I'll try to work side by side with them.
Mhm.
You know, you could let them see you sweat a little bit,
Yeah.
so they know that, you're there with them. And things like that gain their respect, rather than I'm in an air conditioned bridge and just calling them on the radio and letting them do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Um, Leadership is also, I think, about balance. So you have to know when to step in, when to step back. You have a full team and everyone's opinion is valid. So you have to be able to let them be able to communicate as well. Listen to your crew and let everyone have an opinion, and we might have a better solution rather than just trying to impose your own opinion on something. So it's like two heads are better than one, that kind of way. So
Yeah, I think also that the offshore or maritime industry or just working out at sea actually, it's very nuanced in like the management, I think, because you have to have an element of discipline. So like older captain barking orders at you, like it's not really so out there. But if you bring that onto on shore in a like office scenario that is really
yeah,
kind of weird. But I think, like as you said, it's about balance. So I think it might be very difficult because the management style, like if you don't manage your crew or manage everyone in a good way, then real consequences can be fatal,
yeah,
so I can't even begin to understand that level of responsibility when it comes to ship and management offshore or at sea. Okay, so anyways, let's move on. Well, the next question is, what do you think makes a crew work well together, especially in such close quarters?
yeah. So as I said, clear communication. You need to be able to communicate with your crew. Motivating the crew is very hard. If you have a crew of the same nationality, sometimes it could be a little bit easier, with respect to how well they work together. You have cultural differences and whatnot when they mix nationalities. You have certain foods people don't eat. Small things like being considerate about personal space, respecting cultural differences. Those things go a long way. And having a little bit of humor as well helps the morale. A change in morale can make or break a hitch. What I've seen as well is that, you have one crew working one shift, the other working another shift. You need to make sure that the workload is even between them, because some might look as if you're taking advantage of one side or you're showing favoritism.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then another thing that most companies do, you try to give them some time off, like Sundays, you give them off. And one thing I've also done regularly is like when upon completion of certain jobs, when you inspect praising your crew for doing a good job, thanking them, especially when you have safety meetings. So yeah, little things like that. I usually try to have a meeting at the beginning of the hitch to discuss what the plan is, so everyone is on the same page. Have open discussion that, if they see something that they think needs to be done,
Mm-hmm.
or if they have any ideas, then feel free to say so. It all comes down to communication, I believe.
Yeah. And I think it's very important too because I've seen a lot more stuff about mental health and seafarers, like
Correct. Yeah.
a lot more articles on it, people speaking out more about it. So I think it's important to foster a team that kids speak up when when
Mm-hmm.
when things aren't going so well and y'all could work together. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't envy you at all. The more the more we talk, so many different things about your job, so complicated, and you have to manage this constantly. It's
Mm.
it's a lot. It's very interesting.
Especially when there's conflict. That's like another thing that's very difficult to manage as well here in both
Yeah.
sides of the story and investigations and you know
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to resolve the situation.
Yeah, I think people who have never been to sea or there is an element to that life working on a ship that people just cannot understand unless you're in that environment and the nuance of it and how complicated the social interactions are.
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know it's very, very complex.
Mm.
But has there ever been a situation where you had to speak up for someone, make a tough call, or what guided you in that moment?
Well, I mean, there have been situations where I believe I should have spoken up, but it becomes difficult where you have to speak up to someone whose authority is higher than yours if it's the captain and whatnot. So you try to, you want to avoid any kind of conflict or having any kind of arguments with the captain for sure. So I mean, there have been one or two situations where I should have spoken up, but I still was able to deal with the situation effectively, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
There has been one situation, I wouldn't go into details, but I basically disagreed with a decision the captain was making. I didn't make it too obvious to everyone who was there at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I spoke to him afterwards because he thought that I should have spoken up and took his side. There was a discussion taking place, and he thought I should have spoken up and took his side. I didn't say anything throughout the whole discussion. I was just listening to both sides of the arguments. After that, he basically attacked me, and I spoke to him and told him, well, I disagreed with your decision, and I stated why. I spoke to the other person who I agreed with, and I told him, his approach was wrong because there was a lot of shouting and whatnot. So in general, I think it can be difficult. It can be difficult, but it's better to say something rather than to say nothing, especially you don't know what the outcome will be afterwards. And you could end up being complicit of, whatever consequences happen afterwards if something was wrong and you allowed it to happen.
Oh,
So you have to focus on the bigger picture itself. You focus on safety and fairness, and you try to be professional at all times.
yeah, because actually that's an interesting point that you raised because if you are complicit in something that causes some kind of malfunction or accident or something like that, when you work in that type of environment, you are held, you could, in some countries, you could be held on criminal charges and stuff
Exactly.
like this. So yeah, it's very important for you to not to speak up and to wow that's something I didn't really think about because you from time to time you would see like a captain being charged for some collision or something,
Exactly.
yeah, globally or something that happens or they're locked up in some country in somewhere or something like that. I mean that's probably like kind of scary to think about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Having the role of a captain can be scary at times for sure because, if anything happens,
Yeah,
if anyone dies, if there's drugs found on board, it's the captain's responsibility for making sure everything is,
yeah.
done correctly. So he will be held accountable.
Wow. Even if he has no clue or nothing, he's still held accountable.
Yeah, he's still, for the most part, yeah, he's still held accountable.
Interesting. So, well, what keeps you going all these years? I mean, like, what keeps you going back to work?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's a job. As I mentioned before, depending on which company you work with, the salary, the wages can be good. but it's also about your reputation. So you always try to make sure, as I said before, you don't want to be complicit of anything.
Mhm.
So say something. So the industry, especially in Trinidad, is small. So how you conduct yourself, it will follow you. You know, people
Yeah.
will talk, and you really want to have a good reputation throughout your career here. But even beyond that, it's about providing for my family and staying focused on the bigger goals that I have for the future.
Yeah. So you intend to continue on. There's no like I've spoken to some like some of the interviews that I did, and all the women generally have a plan to move ashore at some point
Yeah, I
in time.
mean that's the same for me.
Is the same
I'm
for you?
currently
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's the same for a lot of seafarers. They have this plan, this
Mhm.
grand plan of switching to something show based, and I'm hoping
Yeah.
that the money that they get is the same.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, yeah, that is my plan as well. I didn't mention I'm currently doing a Master of Science in Operational Maritime Management.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll make me like a more viable candidate for any kind of show-based roles together with my master COC. So we
Yeah.
will see how it goes.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, that's I think you would be very marketable, on sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And my
I
wife, my wife she would love that. So
yeah, well, I know your wife, and I know she would.
yeah.
Yeah, soon, soon. I should actually talk to her to do an interview with her. And it would be
Yeah.
nice to have the perspective.
To put pressure on me. Okay.
Yeah, basically. Okay, so if there's something that you could do to help the offshore industry now, right? What's one thing you would do differently or that you would change?
I push for more. I think a lot of companies they don't have a structured career development pathway.
Mm-hmm.
So what training you required is their onboard training. Okay, you will know what certification you required, but it's not very clear. I've worked with one company that had it. They basically have guidelines on the things you need to do. They have tasks that you need to be able to perform on board. It has to be signed off by two captains, and then someone from the office side has to approve it as well
Yeah.
before you can get promoted.
Okay,
So
okay.
in this industry, it depends on too much on who you know, and it's not really merit based. So that's something that
That's a lot of it's not
yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess that's for everything. That is for
yeah,
everything,
yeah.
I guess,
It's
not
a lot of
specific to
things are
this
like that.
industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think that would necessarily change, but there should be some sort of guideline on the things specific to on offshore supply vessels and vessels on a whole. Like, what are the things that I need to do if I want to attain this role? Will there be positions open in the near future? It should be posted. So, there could be some kind of transparency throughout the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
thing.
Yeah. I understand and I agree. Okay, okay, I have one more question for you. It's going to be a very loaded question, so prepare. Um, what advice would you give to a young woman thinking about going offshore? And what would you say to someone who's listening, who's in the industry maybe, and they feel like they don't belong?
Okay. Well, to answer your first question,
Mhm.
there are a lot of companies here, a lot of companies offshore. So, what I would say is you need to do your research, choose a reputable company, that has policies that support diversity and safety. Reach out to women in the industry, women who work in these companies. Don't be afraid to ask a question. You could use LinkedIn is a very important tool. You could find out where some of these women work. You could send them a message, just to inquire and build a network of mentors early on before you make that decision and where you want to go. when you're now starting off, it's good to explore and work on different types of vessels, but still do your research to see what would be a good fit for you. And don't be afraid to speak up. And when you're working, it will be hard at first. It's a new vessel, it's a new company, new people. Your confidence will be kind of low, but your confidence and your competence kind of go hand in hand, and both will take time to develop. So just take your time. You've been going through all your training, everything at school that you've learned. Just do what you need to do, and everything should be fine. The second question is what? If someone doesn't feel like they belong?
Yeah, if someone who's listening who feels like they don't belong in it. Well, I said someone, but I really meant like a woman.
A woman, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say I'll kind of repeat it myself here, but a lot of people feel that way. Men, women, they feel that way, especially when it's your first time on board.
Yeah.
A ship, especially as a cadet, because you have no clue what to expect. Yeah. Right? Even as an officer, the first time you're on a vessel as an officer with all these added responsibilities. This is also true if you switch companies. You could be working with this company for 2 years, you switch companies or switch vessel types. You have to meet different people, different personalities. So you may feel as if you don't belong at times. Key thing is to focus on learning and building your skills, and the respect will follow. All right. And you need to remember that the industry needs different perspectives to grow. So your presence isn't just valid, it's also valuable as well.
Okay, Richard. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
That was some good advice. And I think it goes along with what other women who work at sea said to me, that the mentors and the research is important. I think before they go on board for the first time, or before you decide where you want to go, So that's actually just really reinforcing what they've said, and it's good advice too. So thank you very much, and thank you so much for agreeing to do the podcast. It's very
anytime.
I know you say that under a bit of duress, okay, but I'll take it anyway. So thank you again.
Good. No problem, Carla.
Thank you for joining us on Waves of Change Women at Sea. If this conversation inspired you, you can support us by liking, sharing, subscribing, and if you'd like, by making a donation. You'll find a link in our bio. Until next time, let's keep making waves.